All right, people, welcome back to another episode of the No Limits podcast. And this one is a good one. Now, my guest today, Doaa. This is an interesting story. I find it interesting. You guys, maybe not so much. But let me quickly tell you a little bit about how I first became aware of this remarkable young lady, Doaa. Now, we both live in the beautiful city of Plymouth. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who is the owner of the Plymouth 10K run asked me to start the race. So we went down to the start line on a Sunday morning. I had to climb up a couple of stairs, stand on some dais with a flag. The official race starter sounded the horn. I started waving the flag like crazy, and then all these bodies just went running past in front of me like they do at the start of these 10Ks, 5Ks, marathons, etc. Now, at the back of the pack, as the crowd was starting to thin out a little bit, I saw Doaa. She was the only wheelchair athlete in the entire race. And, you know, I'd been to a couple of these things before, and I'd never seen any adaptive athletes in these races. So that got my attention right away. So I thought, you know, when this is over, I'm going to try and seek her out and I'm going to say hello. And, you know, good effort, well done. If you've ever been to one of these things, you know that it's chaos at the end. It's not only the runners, but all their supporters and family. And there's food trucks everywhere. And, you know, it's a bit crazy. It's hard to kind of find people. And I never ended up finding her. But then driving around Plymouth, it's a small town. I'd see her around, never really in a position because I'd be driving to stop and say hello. And then she reached out to me the other week randomly and asked about coming on the podcast, which was great. And it was great for two reasons. First of all, I was going to get to finally meet her. And second of all, one of the biggest headaches with these podcasts is actually getting people to agree to come on them. So she did me a massive favour. Now, this is a great episode. I urge you to listen to this episode. And if you have a young daughter, not that that matters, whether it's a son or a daughter, whatever it is, just a children, anyone that you think could do with a shot of motivation, get them to listen to this as well. Because this young lady has been through a lot. And she's come out the other side, and now she is using her experiences and her challenges and the adversity that she's overcame to inspire others. I'm not going to say any more than that. Just stick your earbuds in, put your feet up, and sit back and enjoy. Doaa, welcome to the No Limits podcast. How are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm really excited, honoured to be here to actually get to speak to you. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to these restrictions easing. I'm looking forward to getting back out amongst other people. And as I look out the window now, the sun is shining. It's a little bit cold, but the sun is shining. So I'm looking forward to getting back out into nature, you know, and enjoying this beautiful city that we live in Plymouth. Now, this is rare because you actually contacted me about this, right? And this is one of the hardest parts, I think, of podcasts is actually finding guests, because you go to like 10 people and maybe one of them will be like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. So I've never had anyone reach out to me before. So thank you for saving me a massive amount of work in hunting people down and asking them to come on. You've done me a massive favor here. But I'm really excited about this episode. We've kind of talked offline, and I'm very aware of who you are. I've seen you around Plymouth from time to time. I think I said in a Facebook message, the first time I saw you was when I kind of waved the flag at the start line of the Plymouth 10K, and you were the only wheelchair athlete that was racing that day. And then it's one of those things. It's like, you know, I saw you then, and then I'm driving down Royal Parade, and there she is again. And I go through town, there you are again. And I saw you loads, but I was never in a position to approach you. I was always driving or something where I could come up and say hi. And, you know, and that's a bit weird anyway, I think, isn't it? Just randomly walking up to somebody and saying hi. So it's great to finally connect. and to get you on here, because I'm really interested in your story. And I think I haven't done a massive amount of research because I think sometimes that can spoil these things. But I've scanned through your Facebook and Instagram. I think you've got what's going to be a great story that can inspire a lot of people. So most of the work here, unfortunately, is on you. um, so, I mean, start where you want to, wherever your journey began. Please just wherever you're comfortable. We'll start from there, work our way through, and get to where you are today, and talk about some of the cool things that it is that you actually do now.
Amazing. Well, that was a huge intro. I'm trying to like pick at every little point that you said to answer everything that you said. And I think it's the same, Mark. Like I've obviously, who doesn't know who Mark Omrad is? Do you know what I mean? Like I've always known you, and you. I don't like to put other people on a pedestal to inspire me. I like to find it within myself because I think it is genuinely and truly your own self you can be your own hero, you can write your own story. And I think it's really important to see yourself as your own hero. But I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeing other people who inspire you, who push you to be a better person. And it's truly about surrounding yourself in that environment. So you definitely are someone, from my own home city, and both of us being in the same place, like of course I'd be inspired and really look up to what you do. I mean, you're a legend, and I'll always say that. And I think, I've not had the opportunity to speak to you myself either. I do remember seeing you the 10K, and it's a rush, an excitement, and it was my first 10K to do. So it's not, you don't just stop and be like, oh hi, like you've got so many nerves, so you're
Yeah,
just like, you just want to get it
focused.
done. Exactly. And I hear it so many times, I'm in my racing chair, or I'm bombing it down embankment, and all these people see me, and I don't know who sees me because I'm just so focused on my training. And so yeah, it's great to know. But I think with my story, I think it's, well, just a little bit about me. My name is Doaa. I'm from Plymouth. I'm 22 years old, and I am a wheelchair athlete, to be so specific, wheelchair racer. I am a makeup artist, a model, and now a disability rights advocate. And I'm so passionate about everything that I do, from my wheelchair racing to my wheelchair disability rights advocacy. I think the world really has a very, very negative narrative. That the preconception of disability is so negative, and we're, always being labeled as incapable, and needing to rely on other people. And it's so wrong. That narrative really is harmful, and that stigma around disability is so harmful. And I think we need to get together, and as many of us to go out there and to really disrupt the narrative. And this is what I call myself a disruptor of the disability narrative, because I'd literally come along, and people have all these expectations and ideas of what they think disability is to be, and then I completely obliterate all of them. And that's what I think we need to do, and for the change to happen. So I've really dedicated my life on, I, I feel like I was forced into this role because of society and its preconceived notions of me as a woman of color with a disability. And I think I was forced to be in this role because reaching out for jobs in the beauty industry, I'm forever getting shut down, turned away, accessibility issues, living in a society that is made without me in consideration whatsoever. And I think that caused me to, you know, aside from having a complete mental breakdown and just, like seeing that the world, I just didn't belong. I didn't see myself represented growing up. And it it really affects you mentally. So there was a point where it just piled up, and I just completely broke down, mentally, physically, emotionally, anything you can think of. And I think in my darkest days is where I had to really, really dig deep and get myself out, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here. So I think that really was a testament to who I am as a person, and what I can do to get myself out of such a dark place. And I did eventually. And I think the first thing that I did was to, right, I can't handle this. Like I cannot be in a society that's forever, you know, not acknowledging my existence. So I had to be the representation, and I have to be the representation of me and those who need people like me growing up, and for the world to know that disability isn't what it labels it to be. So yeah, this is who I am, this is where I am, and this is where I plan to continue pushing.
Do you know what I like about what you're saying there? There's a couple of things I want to unpick there. First of all, you said you identified this kind of gap, right?
Mhm.
Now I'm 37. I met a lot of people in my life, and a lot of people have said things similar for different reasons. What I mean is they've identified a gap, whether it be in business, in our situation, in whatever it is. But not many of them actually take action or do anything about it, right? And that's the
Mhm.
problem. But what you've done is you've taken action, right? And you've seen that, and you're like, I'm not just going to sit back and, because I imagine it made you feel terrible seeing that need to be fixed, but you've done it. You're amongst it. What you said earlier was you're so passionate about everything you do, and that's the key. I think to anything in life is passion. You know, for people in our situations, disabled, whatever it is, you could get a job, but it might be getting a job for the sake of getting a job, right? That you just you hate, right? But you've gone and like, no, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. I want to be an athlete, a makeup artist. I want to be an advocate. And you've done it, and you're making difference, and you're making change. And that's the difference that makes a difference, right? It's the easiest thing in the world, and it's common sense, but taking action. That's the big difference. Where
Absolutely.
that's usually where a lot of people stop. They'll rant and rave that we need to change this, we need to change that, and then they don't do anything. So
Mhm.
hats off to you for doing it and taking action, taking a stand, and positively moving things forward. Not just for yourself, but it's going to have a ripple effect and help a lot of people. Now,
Mhm.
you mentioned, I picked up when you were talking, you said something about growing up, right? So I don't
Mhm.
fully know your story. Can I assume by you saying that you were born as a wheelchair user, or did you maybe
Yeah.
have an incident? Okay, can we talk about that a little?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people often are, did you have an accident? Were you able-bodied and then you became disabled? No, I was actually born with a spinal condition called spina bifida, and it is the incomplete development of the spinal cord. And that has left me with, very patchy sensations in my legs, and then my feet completely no sensation, no movement. So I don't have the ability to walk unaided. So the best I can do would be on crutches. And yeah, that's yeah, it's just put me in a wheelchair really. I think I spent my childhood in a wheel no on crutches, and that was, I really clung on to that because that was my only part of normality, and it was the only thing that made me feel like everyone else. So as a kid, you don't want to be different, you don't understand it, and you just want to be like everyone else. And I really, really, you know, fought so hard throughout all the pain, especially when you get older, you start to put on weight. And obviously, leading up to my depressive state and stuff, I did put on weight, a lot of weight. And when you're on crutches, it becomes difficult. I was getting blisters on my hands. And the embarrassment of falling and tripping all the time in school, in the rain. And I sacrificed and went through all of that, purely through all that pain, just so I don't look disabled. And I mean, I looked different as it was. Like there was a limp that I had to my walking that I completely hated, and it made me so insecure. But to me, that dealing with that was better than to sit down and admit and surrender to my disability. So I did all I could to be able to walk. And obviously, as you get older, a lot of it, Mark, is, as you would, I'm sure, understand, is internalized ableism in yourself, you know, and it was really, really within me, hence it being internal ableism. And it was me just not wanting to, you know, fit the mold of disability. And I did all I can to try and fight and get away from it. And as you get older, like I said, you put on the weight, it becomes difficult and more difficult. And then you mature and you think, come on, Doa, like, are you really going to live your life, you know, going through the struggle of being on these crutches? Or do you want to save yourself the hassle, get over it, just get in a wheelchair and eventually adapt and just become confident? And honestly, it did take me a while. I think I got in a wheelchair at 12 years old. And, you know, it was hard. And then as soon as I got in there, you know, I started to see the benefits. There was so much more confidence. I wasn't so aware of, look at people, they're looking at how I walk, the way my leg was limping. And I'd just be able to get in my chair and I would just push. And I could overtake people. I could be in my own little zone, my element. And that, you know, I started to find the confidence in that, and it just became a part of me. And I think I just grew into my wheelchair, and it's now something that I is a part of my life. It's who I am, but it doesn't define me at the same time. It's given me the independence, the self-confidence, the self-esteem, and yeah, it's become something so huge part of my life, and I'm grateful to have found something that has brought confidence out in me.
Yeah, I think a lot of able-bodied people don't get this. I explain this to my wife a lot, like when it comes to walking around when I'm on prosthetics, and I imagine it was the same for you.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of able-bodied people take walking for granted, like how you don't have to think about it. It takes
Yeah.
minimal energy.
Yeah.
You know, I think back to when I had legs and I used to go out drinking and I could walk home drunk just on autopilot, right? But now,
Yep.
and I think we're very similar, it's like it's effort, it's a lot of work. Like if I go walking through city centre,
Absolutely.
I have to look at the camber of the pavement. Are the pavement tiles
Yeah.
cracked? Is there a crazy person like
Yeah.
texting, walking on their phone with a baby going to run me over? And it takes a lot of mental energy and
Oh,
physical
yeah.
energy just to go and do the simple things that before you didn't have to think of.
Yeah.
Jump out the car, run into the shop, grab a can of Coke. Kind of that stuff that you avoid that kind of stuff at
Yeah.
times. You're like, oh, I'm too tired. I can't be bothered. You know, so I get what you're saying. Like we went to Disneyland once, and I'm telling you now, it was like me running a marathon every day. And so when you're saying about jumping in your wheelchair, I get it. You can switch your brain off because you don't have to worry
Yeah.
about tripping or falling
No.
or blisters on your hands, as
No.
not in the same way you would have with crutches. I'm sure you get some discomfort from using the wheels, but yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so much more enjoyable, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
you can just I do. I worry about tripping and falling all the time, and you just mentally. People try having a conversation with you, and you're like, "Look, dude, I can't talk. I'm so like
Exactly.
tuned in right now on walking
Yeah.
and concentrating. I can't speak to you. Leave me alone. Shush. I have to
Yeah.
stop."
Yeah.
No, I totally
Yeah.
get that. But one of the things, and I always think about this, and I have so much respect for people in your situation. Is my childhood was normal. I didn't get injured till I was 24 years old, right? So you know, and school is rough enough as it is, you know what I mean, without a disability or being different in any way, shape, or form. So I was very fortunate. And then on top of that, I was lucky enough to be able to go into the career I wanted to go into because I was able bodied. So, and I always think about this and I talk to my kids about this. And, you know, growing up with a disability, I think must be so much harder to go through. You know, you go from a child through school, you know, puberty, all that fun stuff, to
Mm,
adulthood, to your career
mm.
path. You know, what were some of the, if you don't mind talking about it, what were some of the most difficult parts of that, you know, just growing up?
You know what? Before we say go into that, Mark, I just wanted to say, like, see, this is the opposite, like, opinions that we have, because uh, respect would be like such a small word to use that I have for people like yourself. And I've always said this because, like, I've grown up with my disability.
Hmm.
I've had no choice but to adapt. And yes, it's been difficult, and there's been so much trauma, tragedy, so much into it throughout from being a kid. And a lot of people go, like, what a shame. Why does a little kid have to go through that because they've born with a disability? Whereas people like yourself who've, had the privilege of being non-disabled, and then for life to completely switch on you, and because you've had the two sides, and it's like, I cannot fathom, and it's making me emotional because I cannot fathom the mentality that someone has to go through to bring themselves from where they were to what they have now. Like that, to me, I can't say anything because I don't know how I would cope, like if I even would. So for me to be, I feel like I guess it's just a personal opinion, but I feel like I've kind of had it easy. Well, not easy, but I've grown into it. Whereas to have something so tragic happen and to continue on is baffles me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, like, but I think, yeah, for me, it was difficult because, like, my childhood, I didn't have the representation there. Like, I didn't have anything to tell me, oh, you're going to be this. It was all like, even Mark, I couldn't even like compare or say like, oh, I'm this superhero or I'm this princess, because they were like never me. And it's like, obviously I would as a kid, I'd be like, oh, she's me or whatever. But deep down within me, I couldn't say that because I was like, yeah, but she's not in a wheelchair. Like she can walk. So how is she me? And then does that make me unworthy or not good enough because I'm not being represented? Does that make sense?
It does, and I've never thought about that before. Like that
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. And this is maybe something we need to speak about offline later, because I've had an idea what I'm pursuing when it comes to children's books and my situation. But we can talk
Yeah.
about that later. Please continue.
Yeah. And I always say this, Mark, like, how can you be what you cannot see? And that's literally like why I had to go through. Like, how can I think of being something or someone if I've never seen me or people like me out there being an athlete, being this, being in cartoons, being with other kids? Like, my childhood / womanhood has never been represented. I've never been with everyone else. I've always been excluded. And that takes immense mental, spiritual strength, all types of strength to go against that and be like, okay, I haven't seen that, the representation isn't there, but I still will be it. I will make that representation. I will be the representation for the other younger girls who are like me, who are still going to be like me and don't have it out there. I will be there for them to see that I've achieved it and I've done it, so you can as well. Because I know the pain and the suffering of not seeing what you can be. So I don't want anyone to ever go through that. So I've become the representation. I've become my own campaign, my own self-love, my own self-acceptance, to allow younger girls, men, children, whatever, who have disabilities, to know that you still can be just as successful and you don't have to let your disability define you. Society might not want to or is scared to admit that one day they might themselves might have to be in a wheelchair due to old age, or I think it's something that society really tries to run away with. But at the end of the day, Mark, we all know that disability can happen to anyone, and you more than anyone. Just a click of a second, then your life can be changed. So we shouldn't be running away from it, and it should be something that we make society so much more inclusive, accessible to those who even invisible disabilities are a thing. They exist, and people that we don't see, can't see them physically, with their disability, they struggle, and it needs to be accessible and inclusive to everybody. Yeah.
I think we're making progress as a society with that, but it's still a little bit. This is just me nitpicking now, but if you do go into somewhere like Plymouth City Centre, like the paving it's horrendous, isn't it? Like the it's like, I don't know what they did when they laid the paving in the city, but it does this. in places, and I walk around like this, like on a roller coaster, trying to get from one place, and it's all uphill at one point. Then it's that, it's like you just need to kind of like make it a little bit easier going for, because there are people like I never really thought about people who would struggle around on crutches, because I imagine that took a mass amount of energy as well, upper body strength. You just don't need it, do you? You just want everything to be flat, tarmac, and smooth everywhere you go,
Ideally, yeah.
in an ideal world. But I'm sure they could make a few adjustments to make it a little bit easier, to get around. But when this is interesting, actually. I know you said twice now that you have become the hero of your own story. But when you were
Hmm.
smaller and you were looking at the Disney princesses, and like, well, where's the one in the wheelchair? Well, if there wasn't anyone to look up to that you recognized as similar to yourself, who did you look up to before you decided, actually, I'm going to be my own hero? Was there anyone growing up that really stood out to you as a strong role model?
Honestly, I don't think there was. You know, I couldn't relate to anybody out there,
Mm,
and that made it very, very hard to find a role model. And that's why, like when I said to you at the start, I it's become something within me that I choose not to idolize or see someone, put someone on a pedestal, because I never got that from the beginning. So it must be some psychological thing going on there. But I think it, I couldn't see anyone. So for me, it was very hard to find inspiration in other people. I think once I got into sport and like David Weir, and things
mm,
like that, that people like that within the sport and have inspired me to achieve. But I think growing up, no, I this sounds really soppy, but my mum's always inspired me, and
mhm.
she's my inspiration. So I've always looked up to her. Um, yeah, I feel like she was the only person that I could really go to and get advice from, and she's the reason why I am the woman that I am today.
I see a gap in the market here for a new superhero, a new comic book with you as the main character.
I
Either
would love that.
these are some of the I've always got loads of projects on the go, and this is one that I'd really want to do. I thought about this a while ago, where I guess selfishly I was just thinking about myself, but I thought I could tell my story in like a series of kids books, right? Where not the graphic version, but I'm on the back of the
Yeah.
helicopter and I'm getting saved, and where they put in like saline solution to give me fluids, maybe they accidentally put in a super secret government Captain America style formula and give me superpowers right on the back of this helicopter, and
Oh
I get
wow.
issued my prosthetics, and all of a sudden I've got super strength and speed, and I can time travel. And I thought to myself, like, when I was going through school, I was quite fat. There was this turning point where someone said something to me when I was about 12, and I started figuring out how to work out and to get fit, so I can like
Hmm.
time travel back to myself when I went through that bad
Hmm.
period and do a whole book about why you shouldn't bully people. Then I pick a
Yeah.
time in my life where I completely failed and fell flat on my face and thought that was the end of life, and then do another book about why failure isn't a bad thing and it's all part of a journey. Create this series of books for children to read, what teach
That's
them
amazing.
lessons, what are perceived as negative, like disability, failure,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and we're like, actually, here's a different perspective on it, because this is what actually happened to me in my life, but you've dressed it all up like a cartoon and a superhero book, and
Yeah.
it gives them a different perspective. I think that absolutely you can do this with all the stories that you would have had growing up. You write them down, get someone to draw you as a superhero cartoon, and then just start putting out content and books and pushing it out to young girls now that are 10, 12, 15 years
Yeah.
behind you, young girls growing up who need what you needed. Someone, I
Absolutely.
read a quote once. It said, be the kind of person that you needed when you were growing up. Do you know what I mean? And you're saying you didn't have that
Yeah.
person. You had your mum, but you didn't have
Yeah.
that superhero, comic,
No.
cartoon, whatever it was. Be
Yeah.
that person for the next girl or the next boy that goes through everything that you've been through growing up. I think I get so excited like talking about it. And if I had, I'm always searching for the right people to bring into the team to make these things happen. But absolutely, you know,
Yeah.
this is on my list of projects for the future, and I'm absolutely gonna stay in touch, and you know, we could create something pretty cool here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Now, here's what I'm interested in. This is what I touched on a little bit earlier. You know, I said I was lucky that I had a regular childhood and I was able to go into the career that I want to go into. So when you were getting to 15, 16, you know, coming towards the
Mhm.
end of school and everyone's running around going, I want to be a doctor, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a pilot. You know, I imagine you were sat there like, well, what can I do? Do you know what I mean? I would love to do that, what you guys are doing, but I can't. Where were you at then? I mean, what were your hopes and dreams and aspirations for a career once you left school? Did you want to go into uni and carry on education, or did you just want to get out there and make your mark?
Ever since I was a kid, I had the same goal, the same dream. And this is it's so sad, but it's sweet at the same time. And it was, I wanted to be a surgeon. I wanted to be a doctor to make
Hmm.
myself better. I
Okay.
that was that was the that's all I can remember is I wanted to be a doctor, and I made myself watch all these surgeries and going on and all this blood and gore, and because I was like, that's what I need to do to make myself be able to walk. I need to
Hmm.
fix myself for the
Hmm.
world, and that's what I wanted to do. And as I got older, you know, being a doctor isn't smooth sailing, is it? You
No.
have to be, you know, all these amazing grades in uni and all years and years of studies, and studying. And it's as I got older and my like Mark, this is so so like in order for me to explain this to you, I have to dig deeper, and I didn't get the education that I feel I deserved.
Okay.
And nobody really knows this, but what better way to do this than on on Rod's podcast? But so basically, because me and my family, you know, I wasn't born in the UK. I came all the way from the Middle East, from Yemen, and we moved to the UK back in 2004.
Hmm.
And being a child with a disability, the ableism started from then, and it was the fact that the adults around me had you know had judged that, well, she's got a disability, that means she's mentally disabled. And this is
Mm.
this is the other thing that I want to do with what I want to do, is because just because I'm physically disabled or have a disability, I don't it does not mean that I'm going to be mentally impaired. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, it's just the impairment is in my legs. And this is one huge preconceived notion in disability, is that you're going to be affected overall. And for that reason, I was straight away put into a special needs school,
Wow.
a, a school that was mostly for the you know people with like
Learning
mental
difficulties.
impairments,
Yeah.
learning difficulties. And I don't have a learning difficulty. Like, it's just in my legs. And I spent 6 years of my most fundamental, years of where a child needs to be building up that foundation in order to, get the education and to go on to be a doctor or a lawyer or
Mm.
whatever. But because I was there and I didn't speak English, the only thing that I did pick up was to speak the English language, and that, it showed how good I was at doing it. I picked it up in 6 months, like
Wow.
literally fluent. And I was a quiet kid, and I would just sit there listening to the teachers, listening to the teaching assistants speaking, and I would gain all this information and eventually speak English. And when it came to the education, it's not like primary schools, it's it's very different. It's very different. And long story short, I think if I was given the opportunity, like my siblings, like every other child, to go into a mainstream school, to learn the same way everyone does, in the way that my brain deserved, my intelligence deserved, then I truly believe I could have been. I don't want to say I could have been something or someone, because I know I am, but I feel like I could have followed the academic path that I had for myself. But because I didn't, and I ended up going straight into a secondary school. Imagine going from not learning the basics to jumping into straight to secondary, having to go through years 8, like I started at year 8 up to year 11. School was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And when people used to say, "Oh, you'll go out, you'll leave school and you'll want to be back," I was like, I will never want to be back at school. And I still don't want to be back at school, because I didn't have the fundamental education, the basics to help me throughout my maths. I passed my English because I'm so good at, obviously my great English skills, but everything else, I didn't get the grades I wanted, and that really had affected me in my adulthood. And it really did make me feel so belittled in a way, because I wasn't given the chance to achieve in my academic career. But it is what it is, and I can't sit there and dwell on it. It's made me who I am today, and I think, what I've learned now, Mark, is something that no, academic certificate would ever give me. No education would give me, and that's life. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I was going to say that you have learned things because of your situation that lots of other children will never learn. I'm not disrespecting the school system, but I don't remember the last time I ever used Pythagoras' theorem or recited Shakespeare in the park. Don't remember it.
Right, literally.
It would have been really handy if they taught me public speaking, accounting, financing, personal development. Those are all, personal development is something that you've probably
Yes,
unconsciously smashed throughout your entire life. And no one teaches you
absolutely.
that. You have to take it on board
No.
yourself, and you have to take responsibility to teach yourself about things like that, and you've done that. But what I was going to say is you're only 22 years old. Do you know what I mean? I mean, have you ever thought about going back and trying again? You're still so young.
Yeah, like I people always say that it's still so young, but I feel like with everything that I've been through in my life, it's aged me internally. Like
Oh my
I
God.
literally I feel so old just because of everything I've been
No,
through.
not
Like,
old, wise. Wise.
yes,
Hmm.
that's the right word. No, absolutely. I think with what the story I've just told you, I've been so traumatized to the point that thinking of going back gives me anxiety. It freaks me out just because of the experiences that I had, the sitting in class with the teaching assistant, being expected to get something just because I've been taught it then. But they forgot, or they weren't aware that I hadn't learned it in primary school, or I haven't had the basics to help me, achieve what I'm the advanced part of learning. So I spent a lot of time being absolutely traumatized in school, where I felt inadequate. I just couldn't feel like everyone else, and it was really scary for me. So like now I feel like I'm so traumatized to the point that it just all rushes back. But I think it's something within myself that I'm now starting to be like, you can't cling on to that. You can't just, you know, not try just because of what you've been through. Yes, it's been absolutely traumatizing, and it's made me go throughout life thinking, it's something I can't achieve. But I think going back to myself and thinking, okay, take it step by step, slowly, and like you said, yeah, I guess I am still young, and what better time to start than now. um and it's just going back to the basics, I guess. But nobody wants it, do they? Nobody wants to go back to what I feel like I should have learned years ago. Like at being 22, it's like, mm, um, it's not easy, but it's got to be done, I guess.
But do you want to get to 40 and then think about, have that part of your life where you're like, oh, I wish I did it when I was 22? I've got a
Exactly.
friend, Jenny. She was on the Invictus Games team with me. She's a wheelchair user. She's an anaesthetist. Now, I don't know her
What did
entire
you say?
back. She's a doctor, and she works
Oh
with
wow.
anesthetic from a wheelchair. She's when you go into surgery and you get
Yeah.
the drugs and you get knocked out. So that's what she does. I don't know her entire backstory, whether that's what she did before she was in a wheelchair or what, but I know she does it now as a wheelchair user.
Hmm.
And I think you could absolutely have some very empowering conversations with her and get um, a lot of her experiences and feedback, and
Hmm.
see what challenges she faced doing that. She's phenomenal.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what did happen then when you came to the end of school? Did you have a career path, or were you just seeing what came along, what happened, or did you just like have no idea what was going to happen?
I'm
Because
just
you're so
thinking you asked me
successful
that.
now is my point. I'm just trying to figure out piece by piece how you've got to where you are now, and it's only a short
Yeah.
space of time between 16 and 22.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And I think I've just given you a whole like my life story answer for that. But your question was what I wanted to be, and I think because that was the story and that was the limitation to me achieving, um, and it every time I tried to choose a path, I was like, oh, but you haven't got the grades, you haven't got the grades, you haven't got the grades, and it was really difficult for me, and it just even until now, like not having obviously for that reason, not having the grades that I would have wanted, I'm like having to always find like alternatives to how to do this, or oh, I'm gonna have to have a complete career change, or if I really say I want to be a lawyer and I truly and genuinely dedicated my life to it, and I wanted to study books for years and years and 10 years of study, I would do it. Like, there is nothing that you cannot do. Anything you set your mind to, you will achieve. But I
Hmm.
think for me, I don't have that mentality. I don't want to sit there and study. Like it's just because maybe it's because of the way that I was, started. It hasn't given me that resilience in studying. So I think for me, and like you said, how have I got to where I want to be? I think because it's not been anything academically, it's literally been my own blood, sweat, tears, trauma. It's just been me pushing through life and its challenges and overcoming and adapting and fighting, had this battle of life, and really getting comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Hmm.
being beyond my comfort zone. I'm always putting myself out of my comfort zone, and that's given me what I have now. I think you will never grow if you stay in that comfort zone, that way you feel comfortable, safe. You won't grow. You have to step out of that. And I naturally, I think through everything I've been through, now I live in that outside of my comfort zone. I just live in it because I know that growth will come out of it.
Hmm.
Even if it tests me and it's something I don't want to do, it just I've seen the results of what it translates to, and here is the end product, I guess.
And I think this is where you have an advantage, right? Because I think about this quite a lot. I think, again, I'm not disrespecting the school system or anything, but most people are conditioned, to live in their comfort zone. And you go to school and, you're in this environment and you're comfortable, you're happy with it, and you're taught these things, which effectively teach you to be a good follower, right? You will do this, you will do that. If you don't pass this test, you're dumb. If you can't hit this
Yeah,
grade, you're an
yeah,
idiot.
yeah,
It teaches you to be a good follower, a good employee, a good yes man, if you like, right? But
absolutely.
very few people at a young age push outside of that comfort zone and figure out about resilience and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Because everything, especially nowadays, you know, I'm not I'm not going to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but everything now. You know, here's my point, right? I'm on a Facebook page called We Love Plymouth, right? And someone posted a picture the other day from 1954, and there was a lady with 13 children. She was 33 years old, 13 kids, right, in one house, and she was out on the lawn with a watering can, showering them all. And I just think that's amazing, like the resilience, the creativity, the ingenuity of that person to do that. They didn't have Switches or Xboxes or Netflix or anything, but how do you entertain 13 kids on a daily basis? You know, I mean, you're constantly outside your comfort zone and growing and learning and adapting, you know? So I imagine while you were growing up, you didn't realize it. Pretty similar to me in my early recovery, I didn't realize it either, but you're constantly building resilience and you're constantly growing because you are outside your comfort zone. And there's not a lot you can do about it. You don't really have a lot of choice. You have to do it. You have to.
That's it.
And
That's it.
I'm a big believer that human beings are their happiest when they're growing, when they're moving forward, when they're evolving, when they're doing the things they're passionate about, and they can see progress. It's like you know, we're going to come on to this in a minute, but your wheelchair racing, you know, getting your PBs better, your nutrition, dialing that in, dialing in your S&C training, whatever it is, you see progress, you see growth, and then you go home at the end of the week, you're exhausted, but you're exhilarated because you know you're getting better, you know?
Yeah.
So when talking about sport, when did this come along? And I don't know if you've had this experience, right? But back in the early days of my recovery, whenever I would meet someone new, it was like always like within 60 seconds, someone would say, "So when are you training for the Paralympics?" Like it was the prerequisite of being disabled. Like I have to be a Paralympian. I'm like, I've got so many other goals. That's not even on my radar. And it was for years, it was like, when are you doing a Paralympic? And I'm like, never, ever, ever. I'm never going to do it. Right. I don't want to do it. But I do understand from the Invictus Games, from working out, from what I do now with things like jujitsu, the absolute power of sport in your recovery, physically and mentally. So when did you discover that?
Oh, sport. Where do I begin with sport?
At the beginning.
Right at the start. I think sport was what saved me because this disability advocacy, all of that, Mark. That's only been in the past year and a half. Sport has been in my blood. I've been in sport for 10 years. It is the making of who I am. And sport was there to save me when I felt like I couldn't be saved. I think when I left, I mean, I did sport well, just as I was leaving school. And it gave me a sense of being like everyone else. I always say that because that's what it was about for me. I wanted to be like everyone else. And now I the last thing I want to be is like everyone else. Like I've completely detached myself from society, from its expectations. I am my own person. And I think the empowerment wheelchair racing gave me was the fact that I could get in my chair, strap myself in, get on the track, head down, and I felt like everyone else. I felt like I was doing what everyone else was doing. They were running. I was running in my own unique way. And I felt like the track was there to listen to me when no one was. All my life problems, all my issues, a day after school where I had a really shitty day, all I would do is get on the track, and it was kind of like letting my emotions out on the track. It's a connection I can't express, but I think an athlete, anyone who's been in sport would understand. And sport listened to me, that the athletics track listened to me. So I spent my time, getting all that anger, that frustration, just with training, just keeping my head down, mouth shut, and I would just train. And with that, sport has given me things that I would have never, gained anywhere else. It's given me determination, it's given me persistence, it's given me commitment. It's these things that I can take on to in life. I can be, persevere. Like, it's given me so many qualities, and all of those qualities I'm now using in my daily life, in my advocacy, in living, purely from sport. And those are what I've gained. And it gave me a sense of normality back then. But now I've interpreted it to being unique and being strong. And again, it made me kind of tell the world that yes, I am capable. You view someone with a disability as bedridden or completely incapable, inadequate of life, and I've been able to take on sport and completely change my life with it. I think with my depression and my years of just eating myself into my wheelchair, that's literally what I did, especially when I got older and started to understand the world. I'd eat myself into my wheelchair. I'd gain weight, and obviously being a wheelchair user, it makes it difficult. So it was my savior to avoid the heart diseases, all these health problems on top of disability that I would have gained. And as soon as I got in the wheelchair, I push and in itself, you lose weight. Like, you don't even have I was really bad with my eating, and then once I started doing the sport, you start to see the weight fall off. It then becomes an addiction. It becomes a habit of you see change, and you just want more. It's like you just need another dose. And as I got older, matured, and really got serious into really high level of competition, with the Paralympics being in sight for me, you start to adapt, and you adapt your life to your sport and to how you should be as an athlete. But then again, it's like you said, people have this perception that, oh, disabled person in sport, yeah, you'll be in the Paralympics. I mean, I remember when I went to the 2012 Paralympic Games, and I was on my crutches back then, and I was walking up the stadium on my crutches, and I'd have these people behind me going, we want to see you there next. At the next ones, it's you. And back then, I didn't want to, and I was like, what? I don't want to be there. Like, what? Why do I have to be in the Paralympics just because I have a disability? And I think that's the harmful stereotype and the stigma around disability, where you cannot be in sport, or you can't just be in sport to do fitness or for yourself, for your own health benefits, but to achieve Paralympics. And that's so damaging, because so many people with disabilities want to just do it for fitness and to feel better. They don't want to be a Paralympian, and they don't have to be. So yeah,
it's a little bit condescending, really, isn't it? It's like,
massively.
you're disabled. It's your only choice in life is to be a Paralympian. It's like, well, what if I want to become super successful in business? What if I want to become an actor? What if I want to be a musician? Because I don't have to be able-bodied if I'm a really badass singer, and I can still do that. So why do I have to? And you're right, sport, everyone should do sport. Able-bodied, disabled, doesn't matter, because it's so beneficial holistically in life. But yeah, I used to get a little bit annoyed, like, I've got more options than that. I don't have to do sport, but sport is great. And I was going to ask you, have you reached that point yet with sport where you've had the mindset shift and you realized how badass you actually are? And what I mean by that is, when I first started thinking about the Invictus Games, I just thought all para sports were like pity. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, the poor little man with no legs has come up to do swim. Let's all give him a nice clap. Well done for doing so well. And I couldn't bring myself to it, because I'm like, I was a Royal Marine from 18 years old. I passed the longest, hardest training in the world. I've done kickboxing, boxing, Muay Thai, all these things. I've been a bodyguard. And now you're going to give me a pity clap because I can swim in a straight line for 50 meters. I'm not doing it. But then when I did it, I remember the first time I sat on a rowing machine, right, training for the games. And I had to have a fixed seat, and I had my good arm, my prosthetic arm, and it was a 4-minute race. And my attitude was so arrogant. I'm just looking around at me and going, I'm going to smash every single one of these people here because I'm so fit. And I actually went blind. Like the last 30 seconds, I went blind. Like I got tunnel vision, everything's sparkling in front of me. I hadn't hydrated properly, and I underestimated how difficult and hard it was. Like rowing at full speed for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I got off there and I'm like, I've looked at this all wrong. And then I'd go to my able-bodied people like, right, sit on this seat. You can't move backwards and forwards like on a normal rowing machine, and you got one arm, 4 minutes, go. And then when an able-bodied person's collapsing after 3 minutes, I'm like, I'm pretty badass actually if I can do this. When I'm swimming with one arm, I'm like, try swimming with one arm, tie your ankles together, put one arm behind your back, and let's go. Let's see who wins the race. And then you actually start to think back and actually, I'm a badass, right? Because now we're on an even playing field, right? You're in my world now. Let's see if you can do it. What you do, that's not that difficult. You know what I mean? If I was able-bodied, I could do that too. But you're coming to my world now, right? And it's not about pity. It's hard effing work, right? To be able to compete with the differences that we have. So have you had that little moment when you've come off the track and had a little smile and gone, yeah, I'm a badass, or is it on the horizon for you?
I mean, I've had like experiences where people are like, oh, it can't be that, surely it can't be that difficult for you to just sit. And I'm like, really? So I would literally get out of my chair and be like, get in the chair, put the gloves on. Bearing in mind, those gloves, you literally have, this is how they have your fingers. So I know people who listening won't be able to see, but so it's like you got your pinky
Star
and
Trek,
whatever.
Captain Spock.
That's
Live long
it.
and prosper, yeah.
And then you literally do a fist and you push the rims with your knuckles. So
Okay.
the first thing that people have a misconception of is that you get in a racing chair and you grip as if you were to do in your day chair, but it's actually you punch the rims with your knuckles, and that's the first part, and then it's literally carrying your own body weight and the chairs to carry you around 400 meters of the track.
Yeah.
They get in there and they can't finish 100 meters without going, I can't breathe, I can't do it. And I'm like, so don't be telling me that it looks easy, because I make it look easy because I'm skilled at it and I've put the hard work, but it ain't easy. And so when I see those moments and then I see how people genuinely struggle, I'm sure you know of them. Like there was days where in the city centre by the big screen, they'd have days where they have like rollers and a racing chair, and and representation of the Paralympics, people of the public who come and try, and they're just there like huffing and puffing, like, how do I do this? And it's like, you look at yourself and you think, I am a badass. Look at where I am, where I've got, and these people are struggling, who get cocky about thinking that it's easy, and then it gives them a new perspective of people like us, and it's like, wow, they actually have to work hard for it, and that's it.
Do you know what I love thinking about, right? And I geek out on this, right? The human body is absolutely amazing, right? We've got to be the most adaptable creatures on the planet, right? But like I said earlier, when it comes to walking, people take it for granted and it's no effort from, right? So a lot of people just go through their day-to-day life and they'll walk around. If they got to use their upper body for something, they'll use it. But they just live, again, we're talking about comfort zones. They'll live within that comfort zone. But then when you put them in a racing wheelchair and you're like, okay, you've got to use your upper body now, but in a way that you are not comfortable with, that you don't do normally. Let's see how you do. And they get off and they're like, damn. And then you think to yourself, look how much I've adapted. Like, I've got this situation where my legs don't work right, but look how I'm using my body way more to its potential than anybody else around me is, because I have to adapt because of my disability. And that, as nerdy as it sounds, is what gets me excited. This is why I love things like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It's like I can choke someone with my shoulder, right? And I can use my little stump to make someone uncomfortable. And I use the parts of my body what at one point I thought were useless are actually extremely useful, right? And it's a mindset shift. So yeah, I love that. I love challenging the able-bodied. I'm like, okay, you have a go. Let's go. Let's see how you can do. And they've never had to do
Yeah.
it before. Then they understand. They get a little bit of an understanding of how difficult it actually is. You know, I'd love it
Absolutely.
if you could, like when you're on your crutches, if you could
Mhm.
replicate that for an able-bodied person to experience and go, okay, let's go shopping for the day. We're going in town. Come on, let's go. I'll be in my wheelchair. You could take these crutches, and this is what it's like. And then just watch them
Yeah.
sweating and breathing heavy and getting agitated and angry and being like and
Yeah.
snapping with everyone. And it's like, well, this is what it's like for me every day, right? Now you're getting
And
a
that's
little bit of a taste.
absolutely, Mark. And for them, they can have a hissy fit, throw it, and get back to normal. We don't have that bloody option. We
Right.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
We have to keep it going. We have to keep adjusting and adapting because we have no other option but to proceed with it. You know, like that's it. Like people forget their privileges. They forget, you know, the fact that okay, you're trying this out, and if you find a discomfort, you can move on. We don't. We have to live in that discomfort and make something of it.
Do you know another thing I geek out on? And it's obviously never going to happen. But I think to myself now, with all the things that I've learned and I've been through, if I woke up tomorrow morning and was able bodied again, I'd be like next level, like a backflipping ninja, super athlete, you know, just because of what you've been through and you've figured out how to adapt. If you gave me my legs and my arm back, I'd feel like a superhero. Like I'd be able to do so much stuff more than I would before. It's crazy. And I just think I wish more people would look at their bodies. Like you see these people, you know, these ones that run through the park and flip off the rooftops and the
Yeah,
parkour, or the
yeah,
calisthenic people that can do all these crazy muscle ups and stuff and move their bodies, you know, in the parks and the pull-up bars.
yeah,
Those guys
yeah.
are they're awesome.
They
That's
are
using your body to its potential. Do you know what I mean? And
absolutely.
I love that. Anyway, I've gone way off track here, way off track. But let's get back on
No,
to
but
target.
I love
So
it.
yeah, sport. You know how empowering that was. So where are you at with it? I mean, club level, national level, world level. What's the dream?
So at the minute, I was a strong believer in nothing's gonna get in the way of my sport. Like I'm so committed. You know, I've done it for 10 years. Like nothing's gonna get in the way. And in 2017 is where I stopped competing, you know, just doing it competitively. And that that was due to athlete depression
Mm-hmm.
that I had. I had major obstacles in sport, as any sports woman or man would have. Um, that's just part of sport. You get these obstacles and mental setbacks, and I, it was that alongside my literal just meltdown, my mental breakdown, just it all collapsed on each other, and I had lost the love just like that. Couldn't get in the chair, couldn't see it, didn't want to. The thought of the track would make me sick. Like it was absolutely insane what happened to me, and I was in the process of adulthood. You know, I was learning to drive. You know, thinking about getting my license and where I want to be in life, like what path am I going down, and trying to adapt to my disability and finding that love and not finding, and everything just got too much, and I just physically couldn't continue with sport. It wasn't doing what it normally did. It wasn't getting me out, and it was this time it was on me for me to get myself out. So my wheelchair racing had to take a step back, you know, a back seat. I had to figure out what I wanted to do, who I am, what's going on. And I, you know, now I've, so I've changed it from competing to just keeping up the fitness, just
Mm-hmm.
training for myself, for me, because it's in my blood. I don't, even if I was to ever, you know, retire or give up, or I don't want to say the word give up, but, you know, sometimes you just don't want to go back. And
Mm-hmm.
if I was to ever do that, I would never not train. You know, the racing chair is always going to be a part of me. I will always get in my chair and go out for a push. And that's for my mental state, for my physical health. It's just part of me. And I'm now in a place where, now that I'm in the best place I could ever be in, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. And I'm thinking, so it's, do I want to go back? You know, competing is a passion. I love being on the start line, the sound of the gun, like it just thrills me, and it still does till this day. And it's just thinking whether, because there's so many issues and things in sport, like at the level that I was competing at, that I don't want to go into, because they are the, the committees and stuff like that, just big stuff. And I don't want to be disrespecting or chatting a load of rubbish about anyone, or putting dirt on anyone's name. And it's just, sport at my level is very difficult, because I'm not sure if you know, but like, so in wheelchair racing, I'm a T54, and that is, for wheelchair racing, that's at the top. That those are like your David Weirs, that we always used to call it the almost able-bodied, because it's like you have full control of your whole upper body, your trunk is in place, you can move it, and it's just your lower legs. And that is that category is the hardest category, because that's where the world record setters are. That's where Tatiana McFadden, those big names, the big world record holders, and that someone like me who is in that category, that's who I compete up with. That's who I have to be up against. And I think the biggest thing, Mark, is when people think you're in the sport, and especially Paralympic sport, they're like, oh, you can do it, and I think there's a massive misconception that Paralympic sport is easier for some way, just because it's not able-bodied, that it's easier to get into, and anyone that gets into Paralympic sport can make it to the Paralympics. That's so wrong, because there's still categories, there's still times that you have to reach, and classifications and all this, and qualifications to reach. And people forget that, and they think, oh, you have a disability, you can make it. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know the ins and outs. You don't know who I'm up against, who I have to be even close to time wise to get into the worlds, or the world championships, the Paralympics. It is really not that simple. And with my category of disability, it makes it almost impossible. It's not, because it's done, and it can be achieved, but it's not as the lower your disability is, the category. So if I was like a T51 or whatever, the less competition there is. But because of my category and my level of strength, there's a huge amount of competitors that I have to be up against. And that played on my mind. And it was like, because the Paralympics was in my head. I was like, that's what I want to achieve. But once you really get to see where you want to be and where you are, it really affects you, because you're like, how can I? Do you know what I mean? And that's when the athlete mentality kicks in, and it's like, you have to do it. Like, if you want it, you got it. Like, you'll achieve it. But I think that's where I lost my self-confidence, my self-esteem. And obviously with the rules and regulations and the way things work in sport, it kind of like puts you off.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page here, and I can understand. So like at the Invictus Games, I would swim against a guy who had two arms, and I'm like, why are we in the same race? The dude's got two arms. He's obviously going to be a lot faster than I am, unless he sinks. And in rowing, I might row against another triple amputee, but he could have both of his knees and his elbow, which means that effectively he's pulling with 4 points of strength, whereas I only have one. I have one elbow. I don't have any knees.
Yeah.
Don't have an elbow on this side. So I'm like, why are we even in the same race? And then you look at the Paralympics, and you see some of the cyclists, right? So there's maybe one that's got one leg, and they're racing against someone who hasn't got a hand, but it's got two legs. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. What has having one hand got to do with pedaling a bike? Surely there should be but I get it that if you just niche down every single classification, you have thousands of them. But
Yeah.
that's one of the
Yeah.
main things that put me off. It's like I think we were saying the same thing. We're at the higher end of the disability spectrum, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing for us to go against. But there could be people in our
Yeah.
classification who, on paper, are in our classification, but in reality, their disability is a lot less. So, and here's another perfect example. And I know the Invictus Games isn't the Paralympics, but I
Yeah.
watched some of my friends who had both their legs missing above the knee
Mhm.
running against guys who had knee injuries. So they had their knees taped up, but they had their legs, both their arms, and they were in the same classification. And I'm like, that makes no sense. This guy's got both his legs, but he's got injured knees. This guy's got no legs, and they're racing each other. So I just kind of looked at it straight away, and I was like, this is something I would have to dedicate my entire life to every waking second to get to the biggest stage of all, to compete against people that have got massive advantages over me. And why would I do that? And then I just started thinking, and this is maybe a bit rude, but I thought, well, what do all these people do once they've won bronze, silver, and gold medals anyway? They go on to become public speakers, and I already do that. So I've jumped the queue 10 years. So, you know what I mean? Without the heartache of waking up at 4 o'clock every day and eating fish and rice for every meal, I've already just jumped ahead. Do you know what I mean? I don't have the medal. Okay, but I can still write a book. I can still be a speaker. I can still do what they do after their careers are over. I just don't have all the heartache, And I think speaking is
Absolutely.
something that should be on your radar.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Getting out there on
Yeah.
stage, telling your story, inspiring people.
Yeah.
Just you get to travel a lot. It's very well paid. It's a nice experience. Definitely you
Definitely.
should consider that.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to talk about, I think, is where you're at now. You I don't know what the correct term is. Is it beauty therapist, makeup artist? I don't know what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so beautician. Someone who does the whole thing like all together. Whereas, I studied hair, makeup, and nails. So I am a beautician, but I think makeup is my passion. And
Okay.
there's a whole other story with makeup because I used it as a mask to try to cover up my disability. So makeup is my passion, aside from the other stuff that I've done with beauty. But yeah, like I'm just a makeup artist. I think I'm just a makeup artist. I am a beautician, but I like to go by makeup artist because it's what I'm best at.
Okay. And where are you at with that? I mean, this what I love about this day and age, right? And I tell my kids this all the
Mm.
time without trying to give them some sort of without misguiding them. But
Yeah.
I believe, going back to what we said about earlier about being passionate about things, that you can have a career doing anything you're passionate about, right? Like literally, if you love making jam, right, and you start a YouTube channel and an Instagram account, and you do it right, and you reach out to enough other people that love jam, and you make videos
Yeah.
about the different way, and you get enough subscribers, enough likes, you monetize your channel, you can earn more money than most employed people can. And I just look at
Yeah.
the gamers that my son watches that play Minecraft and they're buying.
Crazy.
I saw one the other day. He bought like 20 houses and sold them for $1. So this guy's making serious money playing computer games online. But with things like beauty, that's one of the demographics or whatever you want to call it on YouTube. There are people that earn a great living doing that. Is that something that you're aspiring to, or is it just something you love doing for you? Um, let's talk about that.
So I never wanted to get into the beauty industry because I was I fell into the trap of the girls who do makeup and hair and that are the dumb girls. So
Okay.
I fought so hard to not be under that stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
And once I studied it, you know, the science behind it, that there's so much work. You have to be so brainy. I had, you know, that stereotype is rubbish, because you have to be almost a scientist to know your stuff. You study the face, the bonal structures. There's so much that goes into it, and for people that say that are uneducated, to put it point blank. And I think I didn't want to do beauty because everybody does it.
Okay.
And I know that's just like if I want to do it, I want to do it. But I think I've always been original. I've always thought, do more. My mum brought me up to have to be louder, stronger. Do you know what I mean? Like, I had to always be extra than everyone else, just to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And to do anything that everybody else didn't. It was like, yeah, but that's not how I'm going to be seen. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to be heard, which is why I think falling into the disability advocacy is perfect for me. And with obviously the discrimination that I've had within the beauty industry, where the issues of inaccessible salons, they're not even accessible for me to be a client, let alone to work there.
Oh, wow.
And literally, honestly, Mark, like, I'll go in there and it's like, again, it's like a slap in the face, because it's like, you don't expect a woman with a disability to want to look beautiful, to want to get her hair done, her nails done, her makeup done. Like, it's so narrow and it's so small. Working there, I would have to, there's not enough space for my arms to blow dry and all do all this and move around and maneuver. And it's like, it's not accommodating for me to be either a customer or a client. That's the same thing, or a worker. And it's like, that very quickly shut me down from the beauty industry. And I didn't want to do it anyway, but it was just because I was good at it. I do my makeup like flawlessly. Like, that's what I wanted to do, because I was like, and the other thing is, I wanted to do it because I wanted to give women the confidence and the beauty with, so they've got it within, and I wanted to accentuate that and externally, give them that confidence, because I know what it feels like not to be beautiful. Of course, you've got to work on it internally, but I think I wanted to give women the confidence. And it sucks that it didn't work out, just because of the workplace never really accommodating, and it's really excluding people like myself. So I don't see myself doing anything in the beauty industry, if I'm being clearly honest. Like, I don't want to go back into it. And it's just finding, because I don't know, like, where I want to be. Like, I know where I want to be and what I want to do with the advocacy, but a lot of the time I'm being told you can't make money from it. Like, and yes, you've got to be your own campaign, and you've got to do a lot of things for free and stuff. But I think you get the naysayers, and they told you're not going to make money out of it. But I think it's really important to know that there's companies that don't even care to have disability, like, awareness, included into their companies and stuff. Like, that's how undervalued disability is, which is why I understand the ones that say, you're not going to make an earning of it. But I think, like you said, there's other paths that you could take on to be a motivational speaker. And I don't know, I guess it's something that I've got to sit and figure out and find a way.
You could be a motivational speaker. You could write books. You could get into TV, your own podcast, radio. I make money now. It's something I only found out after Christmas. I've got a Facebook supporters page, and people pay £3.49 a month to be part of that group, and that creates an income. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But someone said this to me a long time ago, and I'm sure it's a real thing, right? But so bigger companies now, right? Think of like Premier Inn or TGI Fridays or something like that, right? Because they're so big, they have to be, I think is it called DDA compliant? Disability Discrimination Act compliant or something? So you have to be able to get in there. You have to be able to get to the bathroom. There has to be a separate fire exit procedure. So you can almost be a consultant for companies, right? Where you go in your wheelchair and you spend the day there going around saying that needs fixing, because that would be a problem for me if there's a fire. that needs fixing because that doesn't work for somebody in a wheelchair. And you're the consultant with the real life experience that brings them up to legislation to meet the legislation for their business. That, I think, that is an actual thing you can do. Someone spoke to me about it years ago, because I was going through that phase where I was trying to leave my wheelchair behind and be a full-time prosthetic user. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But like I say, in this day and age, you can do anything, right, to earn an income nowadays. Do you know what I mean? It's actually quite exciting when you do think about it, that all the things that you can do. So I just thought of another question. Sorry. I know you've had a lot of experiences through your life and you do the advocacy thing now, but do you think the negative experiences from the whole beauty thing kind of pushed you more to want to do that and increased your passion for it?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was after the time where I was really like, oh, I want to have my own salon, I want to do this, I want to do that within beauty, and continuously being shut down, like rolling up to interviews and just seeing the look on their face when they see that I'm a wheelchair user, and you can just see that it's a no, that our place isn't accommodating to you, like, just no. And it's not even that, it's like they genuinely see you as being incapable. Like, it's kind of like, what is she going to do? Like, she's going to need so much for us to put in place, and they're under the impression that I'm so incapable that there would only be a certain like limited amount of stuff that I would be able to achieve without even testing me or trialing me, or seeing just how, getting over that unconscious bias that they have, and just allowing me to almost prove myself, which is, no one should have to ever do to justify who you are or what you do. But I think a lot, fall into that role with a disability a lot of the time. You're having to constantly tell society, yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can, watch me. And it's like, because that happened, and with me just breaking apart because I was just not finding work, and I was like, all I want to do is earn a living like everyone else. I want to have the opportunities, just like any other person, to go out there, do a job that I enjoy, and get money from it. Is that too much to ask for? That, and with me just not getting, the chances, it led me to here. It led me to, okay, well, clearly this world needs education. Clearly they need to be educated on disability, and they need that representation. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
This is a mindset thing, right? So this is the thing. This jumps out at me straight away. It's so obvious, right? So say in an alternative universe, I owned a beauty salon, right? And I was able-bodied, and we're in Plymouth, right? And there's a lot of them, right? And I think they're all very similar. That may be a generalization, but I'm sure they're all very similar, right? So what would make you stand out above all those other ones that are kind of the same is if you had sorry if I get the terminology wrong, a disabled beautician, right? Now think of all the disabled people in Plymouth, like you said earlier, that want to feel pretty and look pretty, right? Where do they go? Oh, I know where I'm going to go. The only salon in the city with a disabled beautician that has facilities for disabled people that specialize, in working with the disabled. You stand out well above everyone else. Straight away, it's 2021. All the local media, I think, would jump on that and they promote that because it's a good story. It's empowering. It's inclusive. Do you know what I mean? I don't understand people's backwards mindset of being like, oh, I don't know. Sorry, you're in a wheelchair. Almost like getting out the vampire cross and be like, stay back, stay back. I'd be like, yes, exactly. Come in. Let's figure this out. This is great because no one else is doing this. This is why we're going to be so different to everyone else. But
absolutely,
unfortunately, that's not your experience. But maybe that could be you. Maybe you could start your own salon. Do you know what I mean? And that could be what differentiates you from everybody else.
Definitely, it was definitely a vision that I did have, being someone who, okay, so all these salons and employees and employers, whatever, like they don't want me, and they aren't inclusive to people like myself. So how about I make a salon that is accommodating and welcoming to all,
Yes.
because, and the thing is, and this goes beyond salons, just with campaigns, companies, brands, and so on. They are missing out on so much money by
Hmm.
excluding a huge minority of society. Like
Hmm.
that, this majority, like this group of us in that minority group that you're excluding because of our disability. Just think how much more money you would be making if you actually include us as
Hmm.
clients, as customers, as so many things. And it's like, it's their loss at the end of the day to exclude such a huge minority. And I think for me, that boat has sailed within wanting to, you know do that. Like, I think because I was never passionate enough because I felt forced to get into the beauty industry anyway, just because it was something that I'm really good at, and I thought I could make a living out of it, which I did. I did my fair share of mobile, self-employment, where I'd go to women's house, get them glammed up, nails, hair, makeup, whatever. And I did enjoy it. I just that and there was a lot of behavioral issues, like just body language of them as people towards me. And some of them I would feel so unwelcomed, and it was just an environment that really put me down
Mm.
a lot of the time. And it was like, is that really worth it? Is that what I want? And I think if I wanted it bad enough, I would have
Yeah.
made my own salon and ditched all that. But I don't want it bad enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not passionate about it, we've said that word a million times, then it's just hard work. And
Yeah,
you want to do what you're passionate about. So what is
absolutely.
next? What's next for you then, as you conquer the world?
What is next? That who knows what the future holds. And for me, I think it's just continuing to do what I'm doing, to keep speaking my story, to keep spreading that awareness, to keep
Hmm.
making that change for my community, for the disability community, and to keep being unapologetically me, and
Mm.
for disability to be seen as something that is so unapologetic. You don't have to apologize for it. You don't have to be sorry or confined to society's, what society sees of you. And I think it's giving the tools to the younger generation, to those who want to listen, because a lot of people, believe me, don't want to listen to what I have to say. And those people I don't need to worry about. It's those who want and aren't afraid of change.
Hmm.
And I think it's just continuing to fight for our rights, really.
Well, we're both close to each other, as in we live in the same city. So if there's anything that
We
I can do to
do.
help, you know where I am now. Just let me know. I'm certainly not afraid of speaking, and I can speak louder than a lot of people. So, I'll do what I can. But
Thank you very much.
Doa, thank you so much. It's been really interesting talking to you and finding out more about your story. When the world goes back to normal, I'm sure we can meet up and face to face. But
Absolutely.
until then, for everyone listening right now, where can they find you online to find out more?
Well, so I'm very active on my social media platforms. So Instagram being my number one. I also have so my Instagram is doa.shayea, and then my Facebook page is doa and then I also have a YouTube channel where I've done a little few bits about my life and what it is like to live as a woman with a disability in a wheelchair. So again, that's Doaa. And yeah, those are just my platforms where I can be found.
All right. Well, once we finished here, if you send me all the links to that, I'll put that all in the show notes and promote it when we push this episode out, and drive some traffic your way so we can find out more.
Thank you.
But thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I just looked at the clock now, hour 35 minutes. This is probably the longest podcast I've ever done, I think. I usually
Oh
cap
wow,
them
really?
I usually cap them at an hour, and I'm just like, whoa, I carry on talking for ages, but I'm
It's
sure
so
you've got
easy to
stuff to
talk to
do.
you. It just goes. Honestly,
Yeah.
no, thank you so much. I'm honoured to have been able to discuss it all with you. So thank you for giving me the platform, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And when we do meet face to face, maybe we can chat about part 2.
Yes, we'll do it. 100%.
All right, Doaa,
Right.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much. Thank you.
I told you it was going to be a good one. I think that is actually the longest podcast that I've ever done. And I could have gone on for another hour easily. I found they were so interesting to talk to. We had a lot of things in common and a lot of things that were actually different, which were also very interesting to try and compare. Like when I talked about childhood and growing up disabled and becoming disabled later in life. Just awesome. I really, really enjoyed that. And I hope you guys did too. Thank you as always for tuning in and listening. Many of you are aware now that I have a Facebook supporters page. I've got 102 supporters on there right now. And that is the reason that I'm able to do things like this and create the vlogs and do the fundraising and all that good stuff. So I'm going to put a link to that page in the description below. Please, if you haven't already, click the link, go check it out, see what it's all about. And if you feel it suits you and you'd like to join that private community, please subscribe to the page, sign up, join up, and come into the private No Limits community. Guys, thank you as always for your support, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next episode of the No Limits podcast.